Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Legacies, a great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, we're picking up in the aftermath of Malivor's escape, and it seems like we do kind of finally... Malivore spent the entire time consuming everything, but now he's found another way to kind of keep going, and that's making a legion, an army of his own that basically he's spreading. And it seems like it's not just like he is not only spreading his powers, but I guess like he's making people into monsters by, I guess, like rather than making... My understanding of this, and maybe this is where I'm wrong in thinking it, but basically he's summoning the monsters from within himself, and then he's getting much like how he made basically Landon by making Landon a phoenix. I think he's kind of applying that same principle to like everyone else. So like Ethan isn't just part Malivore, he's part monster. A specific monster gets passed on to each person. So obviously they're looking all over the place, but Hope doesn't want to just sit still, which obviously you have Alaric being like, well, because Dorian, it's like, right, you should have told Hope the truth. Yeah, you might not have thought she was 100% ready to hear it, but she had every right to know about Landon, especially because we're supposed to be working together as a team. So she's willing to kind of like put down a lot of like her like wanting to kind of go lone wolf, but it's like you're not giving her that chance and that opportunity if you're taking that from her in this moment. So took it from her in that moment, the opportunity to make those, like, what she was going to do with that information. So she decides to go lone wolf, and sadly she ends up killing one of Malivor's monsters. The moment she's like, yeah, you shouldn't have, you ran your mouth enough time for me to hear that loud heartbeat of yours. But the reason why it had a heartbeat is because it was a human. It's the dude that Malivore changed earlier on in the episode. And it's like, yeah, she killed an innocent person. Not like she meant to. It's not like she could have known what was going to happen. But for her, it's like, no, like Malivore now can make people into monsters. I have to take him down now. So we've put it off for too long. Like she's always felt that struggle of, is it selfish of me not wanting to become a tri-bred? And yes, in a sense, it's like, yeah, because the longer I choose not to become a tri-bred, the more people that are going to get hurt. And she's making this decision, and MG, Caleb are listening, and Josie and Lizzie are there, but at the end of the day, like, she's making that choice, but Alaric's like, you can't, like, you shouldn't, we got to think this through, like, we can find another way to save everyone that's being affected by Malivore. But for Hope, it's like, this is the only guaranteed way. And obviously Alaric is like, you are your father's daughter, you aren't ready. And in that moment, she's just like, get out. And because what he reminds her of, it's like, right, so like you doing this though means you're giving up on everyone that is being affected by Malivore, because doing this would mean embracing the fact is that there's a good chance if you kill Malivore, there is no saving Landon, there's no saving Chloe. That means you're giving I said Chloe, Cleo, there's no saving them either. And obviously, like, they're like, how could you say that to her, Dad? So he wants Caleb and MG to look into, like, finding a way to, like, monsterify anyone that Malivore has reached out to. But now it is, the lines in the sand are being drawn of, like, whose side are you going to take in this? And so Lizzie and Josie choose Hope's side. Like, it's like, right, we made a promise, like, that we'd have your back no matter what, so we're here for you. So she talks to the one person she knows that knows Landon better than anyone. She goes to, well, as he wants to call it, the mirror world, and not like the prison. It's only a prison if you make it so. So he enjoys it here. I love, he's like, all the things he's using Excalibur. It's like, you're using Excalibur for like fishing and stuff like this. Yeah. But obviously they're talking about the Landon thing, about like her having to do this, which is like, yes, Landon understands better than anyone. Like, cause Landon's the reason why, like, they all can, why Raphael has, why he has like such a positive outlook now on things is because of Landon, like kind of seeing the brighter side of any situation. But it's like, at the end of the day, Landon would understand better than anyone. If it's like, he's willing to make it sacrifice himself. Like, he was like, if you need to stop Malivore, kill me, then be it. Didn't do that because he understands, like, he doesn't want anyone to get hurt because of him. And it's like, that's something, that willingness to make that type of sacrifice, and, he's instilled, like, he's instilled that in everyone that, he's crossed paths with, even Hope. And it's like, yes, it's going to be hard to kind of live with the fact of, like, Landon being gone, but it's not going to be easy, but they will kind of find a way forward, knowing, like, there was some good to it. Like, it's like, because this whole conversation, this episode is about doing what's for the greater good. And that's the conversation between MG and Caleb. Caleb wants to find another way, but MG's like, right, if we have to, even if it means sacrificing his buddy Ethan, and even Caleb saying, even saying, like, whether it's Cleo or potentially Landon, like, if we have to sacrifice them, that it's for the greater good. Because that was a conversation he had with, because Lizzie blamed herself, because she's like, right, if I hadn't gone on that date with Ethan, he could have been off, like, helping some old lady cross the street or something, be a hero somewhere else. But for MG, it's like, everything we do, there's always going to be someone hurt on the other side of things, because he's like, he chose not to make Ethan a vampire because he thought Ethan wasn't ready for it. Also, he was wanting to become a supernatural for the wrong reasons, and because of that, I left him defenseless, so he wasn't ready for, the supernatural world to creep up on him, because he had his memory blanked out about the supernatural world, so he didn't see the supernatural coming. Granted, being a human and knowing about the supernatural world can make you jaded, like Matt. Matt became super jaded about a lot of the supernatural, in particular vampires. He went through ebb and flows over the course of, like, the Vampire Diaries about that. But regardless, the point is that this is still that same conversation about the greater good again. And I didn't know, like, I was like, somebody's going to get their neck snapped in this moment. I wasn't expecting it. I was kind of expecting Caleb to do it to MG, but MG did it to him. It's like, when you wake up, you'll understand why I had to do what I had to do. And so Dorian actually brings up something really interesting. He gives this thing to Alaric. Alaric has been avoiding the really big conversation, the biggest conversations in his life when it comes to, like, his actual daughters and the girl that he's watched grow up and who was like a daughter to him. And that is, this has always been a part of Hope's journey. Like, this was always a destination. It's just a matter of, we knew it was going to happen eventually. We keep putting it off, those hard conversations, but it's like she was born into this world of, like, being the tribe, being special as she is. Like, it was only a matter of time before it would come down to this. And the same thing on the flip side with the merge. It's like he's prepared a list. It's like, this is the list of people we need to call. And he also have these letters. They're blank letters with Josie and Lizzie's name on it. And it's like, when these have to be done for the aftermath, because he's like, I knew when the time comes, you wouldn't have your mind set on this type of stuff, because yes, you're going to avoid it and try and fight it. It's not like fully accepting it, but you also have to acknowledge there is a time when that will come, and maybe you'll find a way, but you're going to be fighting until the very last second and not being there in that. It's like you're going to be so focused on trying to save them that you won't be there in the moment when the time comes, and and you're going to regret it, I mean, because, like, it's not the same thing, but if you take an example in this universe, it'd be like everything between Damon and him and Stefan's mom. He never got a chance to say what he needed to say to his mom because she died before then. He never got that because he waited so long. He never had that opportunity again. So it is that thing of, like, you want to be in this moment. You want to exist in this moment and be there for your daughters. And this both applies to both Lizzie and Josie as well as Hope, of being there for them. Make sure they don't have to go through this alone. This way, like, whatever the other has to say to it, like, they can say something to each other. So, like, if Lizzie wins the merge, then, like, Josie will have said something to her. But then if Josie wins, like, Lizzie will have written something to her. So it's like, they don't want it to come down to that, but we have to face the reality of it will happen eventually, and we have to be prepared in case it does happen, in case there is no other way around it. And so now it's like, right, Hope, this is only a matter of time, but, like, when she goes through this, we don't want her to have to go through it alone. So after talking to Raphael, she comes out of it, and Alaric's prepared, like, a party where everyone gets to celebrate, Hope, and talk about some of their favorite memories, because it does come down to that point, too, of, like, because it is something, like, not just Alaric, but everyone's scared, because, once again, Klaus was a byproduct of many different contributing factors. Being a hybrid was its own struggle because even amongst his siblings, he was alone. At that time, there was no other hybrids. He was the only of his kind. That can breed resentment, personal resentment, but also resentment where you lash out against the world because of that. He had an abusive father, Also, being a vampire amplifies all that you're feeling, so a lot of those feelings, just got amplified even more, so there's just a lot to why. And Klaus did change. I want to give him today, at the end of the day, despite all he did, was he able to make up for everything he did? No. Doesn't make up for everything he did? No, but he did what he could. He always did what he did to protect his family, and at the end of the day, family was all that, mattered the most to him, and it was about protecting the people he cared about most. And, he had his monstrous side. Yeah, he went through history being one of, that was a whole point that, Landon had brought up the Cleo last episode. It's you were all about making her the tribrid, but you never really thought about, who her father was, being the most prolific murderer in the history, and you were preparing Hope to become a being that's never existed before. At least there were other hybrids. Granted, it's not like there was a slew of them, but then on top of that, she is a very, very, very rare breed of there's never been a being like her before, a tribrid. And so that comes with its own, what that would do to Hope becoming a vampire. Once again, it amplifies you. And it leads to some really interesting conversations. First and foremost, the fact is, between her, Lizzie, and Josie, they created this. They used a spell, because for her, it's becoming a vampire would mean losing her magic. That's so there's a good chance, she'll never be able to do magic again. But it's still, an innate part of her, so... Because once again, it's it just adds this layer of making you... I wonder what, as a tribrid, what would being a witch, even if she can't cast magic anymore, what would that actually do? Because that's what, happens when they're, witches, pass on, they lose their magic. And I'm what would actually happen to Hope the moment she becomes... Because becoming a vampire makes you lose your magic. But it's what will happen for her in the rare case of being a tribrid? She'll lose her magic, but, will it manifest itself in some other manner? Or will she be the rare case of no, I still get to keep my magic, maybe it just manifests in a different form? I don't know. Once again, it's just we're in unknown territory right now. So it's going to be interesting. Because typically, once a witch becomes a vampire, like I said, they lose it. But we'll have to wait and see. But the point was, Lizzie, Josie, and Hope summon this plant, and it's oh, what is it? It's promise of new life, a new life full of promise, so it's supposed to symbolize symbolic of that next stage for Hope, whatever it may manifest as, but also a glimmer of if this is your last bit of magic, this is this to be a symbol of life that represents the magic you had, and it will live on, and it represents that new life being born in your life. It's supposed to be, the parallels between the new life that she'll have as a tribrid plus what this represents. So I thought that was kind of a beautiful moment between them. But at the same time, Alaric talks to Hope and, opens up about, it wasn't about her not being ready, it was about him not being ready. Because, yes, the vampire hunter years ago would have done this without question, but it's because he was an idiot who didn't watch you grow into the wonderful person that you are right now. He didn't watch you grow, and, you didn't become a friend, an ally, a daughter to him. And now that's why he's been reluctant to go there. But it's at the end of the day, you got to trust Hope's choice. This is her choice at the end of the day, and she has to make it. No one can make it for her. But she does get a special appearance from her Aunt Freya. Yet again, Freya's the only one from the Vampire Diaries. Not the Vampire Diaries, the originals that's made an appearance. There's been some other stuff. If you haven't read, once again, just freaking Google alerts giving me like, even though I'm not like, it's just because these recommend stuff to me just because all the stuff I Google related to all the stuff that I review. But it's like, yeah, I got like a casting thing that I read enough of like the headline without reading the article. I typically try to avoid reading the articles too much because I don't want to know too much at a time. But there is going to be a certain someone's going to pop up, which I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But I really liked, Freya being there. Obviously, Rebecca couldn't be, just like there wasn't enough time. But, and her perspective on things I thought was interesting because there was a conversation where, for Hope, it's a conversation of my dad said that my mom, like all my good side comes from my mom. But she's afraid that in the moment she becomes a tribrid, that side of her mom will go away. But it's like, no, like, you are part your dad, but you're also part your mom. And your mom, that part of your mom will, because your mom was a fighter. And so it's like that part of your mom will not go away without a fight. But it's all because she's also worried, like, right, she's like, I loved my dad. My dad was a good person. He had his good moments, but also he had other issues, and she's worried about becoming more like him. And it's like, even Freya can say, like, yes, your dad he was complicated and he had his flaws, but at the end of the day, he would burn down the world to protect family, protect his family. So it shows you like there was like a good nature to him in some regard. But she's like, but the fact is, you're doing what you're doing, willing to sacrifice who and what you love to protect people who you will probably never really meet, people who will never know what you've done for them. She's like, that in itself proves that you are better than all of us. That's what separates you. The fact is, like, because Klaus's biggest motivation was sacrifice for the sake of it. Like, he would destroy and kill and do whatever he needed to, and it take, for his family. And that is a lot easier than willing to sacrifice what you love for people that you don't know. Like, that is, because everything Klaus did at the end of the day wasn't about the world. Like, him sacrificing himself so that the Hollow would die, it's like, that wasn't for anyone else other than to protect his daughter, That's what mattered the most to him, so his daughter would never have to carry that, He made that sacrifice for her. So, it's this beautiful moment of just kind of, and also the talks about, like, what's it going to be like? And it's like, right, Elijah once described it of, like, you wake up and there's, like, nothing. And then you realize there's nothing. And then slowly your consciousness awakens. And obviously it's, like, the world, like, you'll never see the world the same way again. You'll be able to, feel the shifting air on your skin. It's just, like, obviously your senses. Because that was a whole thing, too. Like, Alaric wanted her to have all these reminders beforehand of, like, all these important things, because the moment you wake up as a vampire, like, all your senses are going to be heightened, so, like, you need something to kind of calm you down and be a reminder to kind of ground you. So, but when Freya puts her under the spell, she awakes and sees what I'm assuming is kind of like the ferryman to the afterlife, and she's like, was that supposed to be the afterlife? And it shakes his head no, and she's like, what is that, peace? So it's like, yeah, I wonder, is that supposed to be representative of, like, her human side finding peace and letting go? Or is that just supposed to be like, oh, like, you're dead, like, you could just cross over there and that's peace and you can, but it's like, I wonder I'd assume that's supposed to be like, oh, like, move on, this is peace, like, you'll die, but not necessarily, but I feel like it could be representative of, like, no, this is the human side of you dying, because once you go down this route, there's no going back. So there's that angle to it. But you also have Caleb. Caleb is willing to give him a proposition. Give Malivore a proposition. He's willing to help him, because the longer Malivore's alive, the more chances he has to save the woman that he loves, which, yes, it's selfish on its own, but it's like everyone's selfish in their own part. Like, once again, it's like anyone in Caleb, like, they're like, it takes a lot to be in, because it takes a lot to be in Hope's position, willing to make sacrifices of what you love, especially because Landon would co-sign it. He'd be okay with it. He'd understand it. It's kind of the whole point, and we know he would, and now Hope knows he would, because Raphael gave her that perspective. Another conversation in this episode too is the conversation between Lizzie and Alaric about, it's like, could one of us becoming a vampire break this whole merge thing? And it's like, yeah, it could, but that's still a complicated thing, because it's like, yeah, one of you would have to become a vampire, which Lizzie's like, I'm not signing off on it, but at the very least, it'd be an option. But then she's also like, can we have an open dialogue about this conversation about the merge and stuff, instead of making it this, it's like, it's this taboo thing where like, they don't want to talk about it, because by not talking about it, it makes it less real. But it's like, yeah, it's creeping up. It's happening a lot sooner than you would expect it and want it to. So Alaric is like, right, let's have that open dialogue. And he gives her what Dorian prepared as she's looking at it. He's kind of like, right, like, we can talk about this. And another side of things is the whole Finch and, Josie thing. She's like, right, I had a year to prepare myself for this whole thing, but it's hard for me to, I shouldn't have given, like, it's, of course it's going to take more than a night for you to be okay with it. And it comes down to this, and that was kind of something I brought up last episode, is there's a good chance that if Josie, when it comes down to Josie and Lizzie, she will probably submit to Lizzie and let Lizzie win, because she doesn't want to kill her sister. So that's always been kind of like the thought process behind it. But Finch is like, are you going to let, I know this is messed up to say, but are you going to fight? Are you going to fight to survive? And it's kind of like, and even Josie later on, it's like, yeah, it is kind of messed up for you to ask me, am I going to be murdering my sister? And Finch walks away and kind of being like, I accept that as a no. And it's like, you already knew what my answer was going to be. So you're not looking for an excuse to stay. You're looking for an excuse to run away, because that's what you've done all your life. And for her, it's like, I am looking for someone who'll love me. Look at what Hope is willing to do, what she's willing to sacrifice. But look, despite everything, what she's surrounded by, people who love her, people who care for her. That is what I want, despite whatever happens befalls, like whether I choose to fight Liz, because she's like, I don't know what choice I'll make at that point. I won't know until we get to that point, but I want someone who's going to love me and be by my side, no matter what choice I make, because like there is like no guarantee about basically what tomorrow brings. And yes, it sucks of like, oh, you like, what am I supposed to fall in love with you, knowing that you're going to, it's like, yes, love me despite all that, because it's like, and that to me was kind of like a point. I think I brought that up last episode too, or maybe not. I don't want to give myself too much credit, but it is a thing of like, love me while we have each other. Like, because nothing's ever guaranteed. Like, running away from this now, it's like, it'd be like anyone, like, are you going to run away from someone? Because no one's guaranteed with their time with the loved ones that they have. It's like, someone can be here one moment and gone the next, and it's like, what are you going to just not love? It's like, no, you don't want to do that. It's a very lonely existence. But also for Josie, it's like, she's had so many people run away rather than staying by her side. Like, I think one of the people, despite their complications, like the whole Penelope thing, for example, it's like, I need someone who's not going to run away. I just need someone who's going to stay here and love me. I just don't want anyone to run away anymore. And so she leaves Finch with that, and it's like, what's Finch going to do? I think she'll do the right thing, and it's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard, but, that's love. That makes it all worth it in the end, So their situation is going to be very complicated, but it is going to be that open dialogue, at least going forward. Alaric is going to really, this situation forced his hand to be like, right, recognizing like we have just kind of, yes, we've been dealing with it, but it has been this like taboo, like hushed conversation about the merge, but we can have it like more a more open dialogue about it. So it was just, this episode was filled with some very complicated stuff. Oh man, the freaking Cleo situation too. I was almost let that slip my mind, but her like using echolocation like a bat, because she's like, oh yeah, I'm blind like a bat, and she's like, right, how do bats find their way around? Echolocation. So she used her magic to kind of create like, right, I can't see anything, but maybe it can point me in the right direction, and it led her to the ice cream shop, which the necromancer worked, which I'm like, I wonder, did anyone else fill that void? That was mainly just to spite him. It was supposed to be his hell, so I doubt anyone else. But there's a whole bunch of creatures there. Luckily, Cleo got inside of the freezer beforehand, and she wakes up, and Jed's there in the woods, and like, right, I inspired Malivore with a way to stop the Tribrid, so we need to go warn Hope. And it's like, right. And the moment they get there, it was all a trap. Like, he manipulated her. So either on the way back, she told Jed exactly what, like, she probably like accidentally spilled the beans on what the plan was. Like, okay, so what is it that's actually happening? He's like, yeah, I'm even impressed with myself. And like, oh, the level of detail I was able to recreate. Like, oh, because obviously that's meant to fool even the audience, not just Cleo. So I was like, that's fascinating. Because at the very least, this could stop Hope from doing this. Because it's like, right, if I find a way out, we can conspire and find a way to save Landon as well as everyone else. But in that moment, he did it also to break her, because now it's like, I know how to stop the Tribrid, so Hope's going to die because of you, because you inspired me. Oh, also, you thought you got out, you didn't. So to break that hope in her, so believing that anyone's going to be able to come and save her. So, but it turns out, you know, once again, Caleb understands someone's going to get hurt either way, so he made his choice to do what he did. He's going to save Cleo, and we see he's got like these devil wings. So what did Malivore put inside of him? Well, whatever it is, it's fiery as hell. And so we see that he took Hope. Now, what was the means of killing her? Like I said, I'm wondering if it had, the thing I brought up last episode is I wonder if it had anything to do with like the oak stakes and the oak daggers, the ones that could be the means of, was the only means of killing the originals. And once again, like the thing that it also is how Klaus like put his family to sleep anytime he was having issues with them. Like that whole relation, I wonder if there's some version of that exists specifically to kill Hope. So we'll ultimately have to wait and see where all of this ends up taking us. Plenty of situations where someone on the kind of good guy side has gone bad. I mean, not just here, originals, the Vampire Diaries, you know, so. But either way, it's I'm curious to see how, you know, what's next for Hope, but also what's next for Caleb, because I'm assuming, like, regardless of what Malivore is going to try and do, it's going to happen. The Tribrid's going to be born, and the question then becomes, what are they going to do in the aftermath of that? So I'm very, very excited to see where the next episode takes us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live light to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.